panel. This meeting has been held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast, available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. So thanks very much to everybody for their attendance today. I'll hand over to Diane for item number 1. Thanks, Diane.
We have apologies from Councillor Brooks with Councillor Wilson substituting, Councillor Daisley with Councillor Crowther substituting, and Councillor Law. Conveners will now move to a roll call before asking for declarations of interest. And the following members please indicate they're present at the meeting either in person or remotely. Councillor Armstrong. Present in the chamber. Councillor Brennan.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present remotely.
Councillor Crowther.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Jackson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Moran.
Chamber.
Councillor McCabe.
Present chamber.
Provost Mackenzie.
Present remotely.
Councillor Robertson. Councillor Robertson.
See, she's there.
Councillor Brooks. Councillor Wilson.
For heaven's sake, you've forgotten me already. Present remotely, convener.
Thanks very much. And I'll just note in declarations of interest that I'm a member of the River Clyde Homes Board, but I don't believe it will affect my ability to participate in this item. Thanks very much. And I don't see any other lights on or comments online, hands up online for other declarations. Thanks very much. That takes us on to item number 2, which is the Revenue and Capital Budget Report, and I'm handing over to Craig to take us through that. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you very much, Mr. Convener. This is the standard finance paper that we bring forward in the scrutiny cycle. It covers a number of main areas. It covers a 24-25 outturn position, a period 3 projected 25-26 outturn, and a current capital and reserves position. The 24-25 outturn position is a final underspend of £51,000. Within this, we had overspends within our children and families budget. This has been offset by underspends in adult care budgets and the use of the non-recurring pension monies. And this small underspend has been written back to the general reserves as part of the year-end process. And this has been pretty much consistent with the message we've had during the last year. As at period 3, we're currently projecting an overspend of £659,000 in the social care budget. There are a number of over and underspends within the overall budget. The main driver for the total overspend is due to children and families budget projecting a £3.4 million overspend. This is mainly due to residential placements and child respite overspends at period 3. This forms part of the overall children and families redesign that Margaret's currently working on and take forward. Additional funding from the Clyde Council as part of the budget process will help with this overall review. We also have the use of the non-recurring pension monies to assist with the smoothing of the children and families budget, and we're using this to help us within the overall budget. This is also partially offset by underspends in the older persons budget. However, you will notice that the children and families budget overspend has reduced from last year, but this has also meant that the adult services underspend is also reduced. This is mainly due to transitions cases moving from one budget to another based on the activity of this year. The other factor contributing to the overspend is the work that's still going on to deliver the new voluntary release target, as highlighted in section 3.3.8. This still needs to be achieved, but the SNT are actively working in this area. If this overspend remains at year end, the use of smoothing reserves will be used to bring this position back to break even. It should be noted that the overall IGB budget, including these figures and the health element, is projecting a lower overspend of 116,000 period 3. Always just like to add that into context at this moment. The next section highlights HSCP's progress to date in the achievement of its in-year agreed savings, and this is shown in section 3.3.8. As you can see, we've already made good progress in the delivery of the savings, and it's only the 400,000 that I mentioned earlier on, the new VER target, which is the main one that we still need to achieve. All the other ones have been achieved to date. Moving on to the capital section, section 4 shows the current capital position. The Community Hub Capital project has already started, and this section highlights what has been spent to date in this area. Appendix 5 shows our overall earmarked reserves position. It shows we started the year with 17.161 million, and we expect to finish the year with 12.16 million based on the current projections. As always, I appreciate there's a lot in the report, but as always, happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, thanks very much, Craig. I'll open up my questions and comments. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just focusing on the 2025-26 revenue position. I mean, I am a bit surprised in the sense that this early in the financial year, we're projecting a £659,000 overspend. Now, in percentage terms, that's not a huge percentage, but it's still, in absolute terms, it's a big figure. And I'm struggling to get my head around. I mean, the budget was set in March. This is a projection as at June, and that's a quite significant movement. And I think, as I've alluded to before, I struggle a wee bit with the presentation, right? Because you're telling us in the report that there are earmarked reserves that potentially could be used to cover this current projected deficit. And in a sense that I don't know why we're not actually building that into the report at this point. And I know I probably know the answer to this, but it's also a bit confusing when we look at children and families, and I suppose the corporate director, when again 3 months into the financial year, we're projecting a £3.4 million overspend and £2.68 million underspend. Now, I can understand that the money, the base budget has not been changed for children and families, right, because it's a recurring deficit, right? And the corporate directors make the big underspend because there's money in there to cover part of that recurring deficit, or in theory, there should be all of that recurring deficit because it was a balanced budget that was getting set. It's just the presentation does confuse me a wee bit. But I can understand why the presentation is there, but I just think I just find it a wee bit confusing if you get where I'm coming from.
Sure. Absolutely, I totally take your point on board. Just the first thing there about the 600,000 overspend. I understand, obviously, it's early in the year with that. The main reason it's there is basically because the BB target, the 400,000, we've still got to develop that a wee bit more at this moment in time. So that's making up a big part of it. I always like to bring in the overall position of the IGIB to show the health element of it and how it's partially offsetting that as part of the overall when I look at the budget. In terms of earmarked reserves, I absolutely take the point that's been made here. What I like to do at this point is I like to kind of show what I see as the worst case position at the moment without using any of the reserves at this point. And obviously, as we move through the year, I reflect that and bring that forward after discussions to try and show that if that still is shown at that moment in time, we start bringing in the smoothing reserves. It's just trying to be as transparent as I can be with here, this just to show the full impact on it there. Totally take the point of order in the presentation. I'm happy to look at that.
No,
I even have a look at it, maybe explaining it a wee bit better.
And I mean, I can understand why you do it, right? But just as a user of the accounts, it makes me a bit uneasy, I have to say. And again, in terms of the 400,000, the assumption when the budget was set was we're going to achieve that 400,000, right? Has there been anything that's happened since the budget was set that leads you to conclude we might not achieve that 400,000? That's what it's the assumptions that underlie the budget when it's set. What's changed that then leads to this 659,000. Because if you're a member of the community, if you're a member of the local press and you're reading this report and you're saying £659,000 overspending, that's a big overspend, right? In absolute terms, not in percentage terms, when you talk about £79 million budget. But you can see how people might get a wee bit alarmed and how it would, I suppose, cause a bit of angst. But if you actually then delve into the report and the details, then actually what you're saying, we've got enough in earmarked reserves to avoid having an overspend at all. And there isn't really there's no a 3.4 million overspending children and families essentially in this year, right? Because there's money in the other budget line to cover most of that. But there is that recurring issue that needs to be dealt with as part of the budget strategy going forward.
Okay, thanks. Is it nothing more to say on that at this point, Craig, but take Councillor McCabe's points and comments on board and appreciate you putting those in there. Thanks, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Moran.
Aye, thank you. Give me a couple of points. It's on the children families who overspend, you know. How much are we hostage to the market? I mean, we're building in an overspend because we have to go to the market to use the facility outside everything. But unless you're in a parallel universe, the inflation is running crazy everywhere. We just put prices up, and expect to pay it. Are these contracts tied in at a certain level, or do we get a phone call next week saying it's not enough, we need to put your charges up? You know, is there a mechanism to make sure it stays at that price, or are we hostage to the market?
So, if you don't mind, I'll come in. So, how we procure children's placements is very much determined on the needs of that individual child and the level of risk that's around. Our starting point is always Scotland Excel, and these framework, the charges within framework are nationally agreed and it's quite transparent, but sometimes we aren't able to get placements and that we have to go off framework and do all the statutory checks. Generally, all of this provision is regulated with the care inspection. It is a matter in public. It's out there in the public around some of the debate that's been held currently. Councillor Armstrong's brought it up around the cost of children's services and the residential and the fostering services, that we are subject to market forces, and we can only ask nationally that work continues to be taken forward by both COSLA, the Promise and Scotland Excel, who I sit on the Promise board for COSLA, and I know that is a significant bit of work that's taken forward. So we are at the vestiges. The only thing that we can do is to try and change the balance of care and actually stop children going out our area. We're in the early days of the redesign with the investment that we've had with foster care. Margaret's going to talk to you about that within the paper. And we hope that we try and keep our children within and required and not having to go out to the external market.
I feel appreciate. I mean, it's because there is a mechanism where if on the market then obviously safer with it, you know, but you know, just going forward, you know, the way things are, prices are up all the time, you know, after protecting and overspending. Hopefully this will be part of it. There are a couple of things, again, it's purely, you know, for my information, the mental health is an underspend, and the main reason is with vacancies within the service. Are these vacancies still live? Are we addressing that? Probably because many of the opportunities when it was high up the list of priorities for the Scottish Government and yourself. So are these vacancies still live at the moment, or are they still?
We always have vacancies across the board, and actually if it wasn't for a vacancy position, we'd be in a significantly different place around our budget. We have underspends in mental health, and that is I don't know if this relates to the social work side of mental health. So there is vacancies, and that will be mainly to do with our social workers and the recruitment and retention of social workers. But equally in the health side, we have vacancies too. So we're not an outlier here. This is the issue nationally, and it's something that I think work's been done from national government to look at the recruitment and retention of social workers. Hopefully the new national social work agency will take that forward, but specifically the recruitment and retention of MHOs. But we are actually quite fortunate here that we have got more population than most. But it is vacancies and attracting people in to health and social care.
No, I fully appreciate it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're fortunate that we get new papers, and maybe the technical aspects of the paper, somebody might understand, they don't understand. I mean, members of the public that make the papers, they don't look at the technical aspects. I know about the vacancy about partners, but every organisation, you keep the question, you know. And I suppose it's just the same answer for the alcohol and drugs service, you know, employee costs again. Is that the situation?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Exactly the same.
Aye, okay, thank you.
Thanks for raising those points, Councillor Moran, because they're absolutely important. Right, that mental health is a really important concern and here in Inverclyde, so it's something we definitely need to look at. Provost Mackenzie.
Thanks, convener. It's just a very small point in the world of finance regarding the alcohol and drugs recovery service. That I met last week with a representative from the Alcoholics Anonymous Port Glasgow branch. Now, they've met in St John's Church Hall for the last 6 or 7 years. Before that, for 63 years, they were in the King George VI building. Now we understand that the St John's Hall's up for sale, the heating's off in it, and the church want to sell that building. And they were asking if they could get back into the new hub, and that would be their desire. However, their meetings are on a Sunday night, and it seems to be a very fixed Sunday night. And River Clyde Homes didn't seem to be playing ball with them as far as being able to provide opening the premises and providing a caretaker for opening. With officers' agreement, it would probably be very money well spent if the council would liaise with Inverclyde Leisure, deal with Inverclyde Leisure, and even cover the cost of providing a caretaker for this very valuable organisation to meet within Port Glasgow on a Sunday night.
So I'm happy, Councillor Provost Mackenzie, to take that back and take it off table and have a look at where that sits. The decision around how we spend the money sits with the Alcohol and Drug Partnership, but I'm sure that Maxine will be happy to pick that up with you.
Thanks, and I'll get them to contact yourself, Kate.
Yeah, yes.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost Mackenzie. Councillor McCabe, just to check, is that all? Yeah, thanks. Well, sorry, Councillor Armstrong.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I just wanted to mention very positive work about increasing understanding, improving relationships and trust between children, families, social work colleagues, and the children and children's panel members and the children's hearings, because what can contribute to our difficulties is in fact another organisation effectively spending our budget. Now that probably doesn't happen in other service areas, but the key to it, as has been said, is to shift the balance, but to improve the trust of panel members when social workers are saying this option locally is the best for this child and family. And that work is, I know, going on, and I think it's worth the scrutiny panel being aware of it. It's a different thing from national and COSLA and so on, but it's at the level of making the decisions about our children. Thank you.
Can I just come back on that, and I just want to thank you, because sometimes we forget the work that we're trying to do to shift the balance, and you're absolutely right. that we aren't always the decision makers, and in many respects statutory processes are the sheriffs and the children's hearing. But we are undertaking a whole change process around our assessment processes, and the hearing members and panel members are getting trained in that assessment process. So they themselves have invested into us doing things together and have the same common language. And I know we've got GERFEC, but there's nothing quite like the fact if you've got a panel member that is getting trained alongside a social worker around how that assessment is undertaken, particularly risk assessments, and looking at family plans. It does make a difference, and we see it making a difference in the decision making. So we hope that that will bear fruit in the next year or two, but it doesn't happen overnight, as you can appreciate.
Thanks very much. And just to note, tucked away in page number 7, there's a little section in there as well about the new community hub. So it's good to see that in there. Since it's not highlighted, that it's really good to see that work is commencing and progressing to programme. I know it's just sort of secreted away there on page 7, but anybody who's kind of driven around that area or walked past it will be able to see that work's coming on apace there. So that's really good to see progress on that. So I don't see any more hands up. So it's just to, on page number 2, if we could note the recommendations on that page, with some of the comments and inputs that we've had, also from panel members. So thanks very much. Okay. Takes us on to agenda item number 3, and that is the review of social work governance and assurance across Scotland. And I think Jonathan's going to talk us through this report. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Convener, and for yourself. This report provides panel members with a summary of some national activity that took place last year. It was led by the Care Inspectorate, looking at social work governance and assurance arrangements across the country. And the inspection team were quite keen to focus on how leaders ensure statutory social work duties are carried out, and also looking at our frontline staff and frontline managers in particular, in terms of how they're supported to be accountable and effective in their practice. The national report was published in May, and it's encouraging to see acknowledgement, first of all, about the really complex landscape that social work exists within in Scotland. And then there are 43 pieces of legislation that we are subject to, in addition to other national policies, guidance and directions. They also acknowledge the national complexities around the significant financial and workforce challenges that we've already referred to this afternoon, as well as the increasing demand and complexity of need, not least of all because of the enduring impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the cost of living crisis as well. The report provides a bit more information in terms of how the inspectorate gathered information, but in summary, they looked over a number of different documents, including Chief Social Work Officer annual reports. They surveyed almost 4,000 frontline staff and managers, and they conducted structured interviews and regional focus groups as well. So the report really looks initially at the key national messages and then looks at the local context as well. So nationally, the review found that social work leaders were working effectively within quite complicated governance arrangements, and that oversight and assurance in local areas was enhanced whenever there was a dedicated social work governance board in place. It recognised the changing nature of the role of the Chief Social Work Officer and the role that we all have in amplifying the social work voice in our local areas, and also recognising that services are managing significant levels of risk, both in terms of individual cases, but also financial and staffing resources as well. The report also included some high-level messages for further consideration, which will be taken forward in a number of national forums, but that was really recognising that the ability to match that increasing demand and complexity is really challenging whenever you consider the resource demands and the limited resource provision across the country, and how that impacts on the ability of social work as a profession to fulfil its statutory duties in certain areas. There was recognition too about the national recruitment and retention crisis that there has been over a number of years, and also how the financial position could exacerbate that further. Turning to the local position, we had 110 staff and managers complete surveys, so that was just under 3% of the national total, and the majority of our responses came from our frontline social work staff. So it was really heartening to see frontline practitioners taking part in this process. And within the local messages, they very much overlap with the national position, but locally staff felt confident that they were able to help people to access services and that they felt able to practice in a way that upheld professional social work values as well as people's rights. Again, in common with the national picture, managers and staff spoke about the recruitment and retention and capacity challenges as well, and also recognised the importance and the need for ongoing supervision and training to support them in their statutory role. They did feel supported through our annual appraisal and reflective learning processes as well, and they felt that they were quite clear about our local governance arrangements for social work, as well as how to escalate concerns through their managers as well. So from all of that, we've been looking as a senior management team about how to take findings of the national report and also the local findings forward. And we've taken them initially to the extended management team for the HSCP. We've made some changes in terms of how service managers can be part of some of the broader strategic activity through our senior management team. And we're also going to be looking over the remainder of this financial year at our current management arrangements to make sure that they're aligned with the local picture of demand and complexity, and also thinking about succession planning and development opportunities for managers as well. I suppose one note of caution about this review at a local level is that it only captured the views of frontline practitioners and managers, and it's not the full HSCP workforce. So we're going to look at those findings along with the iMatter survey, which is the annual whole staff survey that's just taken place across the full health and social care partnership. Members will also be familiar with the fact that we've got a number of service redesigns and reviews going on at the minute. And the point in the report about the importance of relationship-based practice is really embedded in the redesign of services in children and families and homelessness, as well as the integrated adult services that's ongoing at the moment. And I thought it might be helpful to just provide a bit more of a local update on some of the activity we brought here before about recruitment and retention, particularly the Grow programme that we've had in place in Inverclyde for a couple of years now, which is supporting our paraprofessional staff to undertake the social work degree. So that's really about retaining our staff who want to develop their careers and to stay within Inverclyde, but to develop their training as social workers. With 9 undertake the degree in the past year. 3 of them will qualify in May, and another 6 will start the course in October. And we've also supported 4 qualifying master's students to come to Inverclyde with financial support for their final year fees. So we've already started to bite into some of those long-term enduring recruitment and retention challenges that we've seen over recent years here as well. So I suppose in summary, the picture for Inverclyde from my perspective is that we can really build on the established arrangements that we have in place where social work is recognised and valued, and to make sure that we can continue to support staff to uphold those professional values and also to help them understand better how the data and the performance information that they're gathering across the partnership is used to develop services and manage risk, and really to enhance their place in that, to be able to better understand and contribute to that strategic development as well. So happy as ever to take any questions, Convener.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Councillor McKee.
Yeah, it's a generally positive picture, both at a national level and a local level. Obviously, there are challenges, but I was struck by a couple of issues, one national and one local. The national issues under 3.6, the second line in the box where it talks about the role and influence of social work, and the view that social work influence is more limited within health and social care partnerships, where it's had a less equal level of representation. But you just want to sort of tease out what you think's behind that. I mean, obviously, we've had the creation of the health and social care partnerships and the IGB boards as well. is it the case that social work feels less valued in that context than other professionals? I mean, I recall 25 years ago sitting in this room chairing the Social Work and Housing Committee, and social work was very much front and centre. And that's the language we used in those days. It was the language of social work. It wasn't the language of social care that we used, or even health and social care. And I don't know whether that's contributed to that, but it'd be useful to sort of tease that out a bit. And the other question is in relation to the local picture 3.9, where it says staff feel less supported to undertake professional and legislative duties. And just be useful to understand what you addressed that.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKay, through yourself, convener. I think in terms of the first point you raised in the national picture about the place of social work influence, the report acknowledged that there are different models for delivery of social work services nationally. So 34% of areas are fully integrated, as is the case within Clyde. Others have delegated only adults or adult and justice services to health and social care. So there are different models of delivery and oversight there. And I would suggest that is likely to be a reason why there is that line about social work influence at times being more limited within some of those partnerships. I suppose there's a bit of a needle on the barometer of integration sometimes for partnerships really do try and meet that bit in the middle where health and social work and social care is quite balanced. And I think locally we're very fortunate with the arrangements that we've had and the long history of integration. And I think that was borne out in the local picture. But I would imagine that that comment links directly back to those different models of delivery and how that's experienced in some of the other integrated arrangements.
See, just to follow that point up, I mean, and again, this might just be based on anecdotal, this is in my own experience, but I tend to find that jobs aren't necessarily called, social workers aren't necessarily called social workers, and they're called something else. Is that a fair sort of view?
It has changed since the development of the Scottish Social Services Council, because now social workers are one of the groups that are registered professionals. So the title of social worker is now distinct within the legislation and the regulations. So previously, maybe 25 years ago, the term would have been a bit more broadly interpreted, but it is defined within the statutory responsibilities of social work. And alongside that, there would be other terms around paraprofessionals, so there will be a bit of variety there. But the survey that was undertaken as part of this was very much about social workers, but also paraprofessionals, so social work assistants, occupational therapists, etc. as well. So that would have brought it out.
Can I come in here as well? So I know that there is posts in Inverclyde that are social work posts that are called care managers.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the review of the management review is to start calling people by their professional titles. So we are actually going back to the future, okay, so to speak, and going that we'll stop using that term care manager. We will also probably stop using the term assessment and care management and call it community social work, because, you know, assessment and care management means nothing to the public. That's a process that is used within social work. It doesn't describe your experience and who's coming to visit you. You know, you don't have an assessment or a care manager. So we do have a bit of modernisation to be done to go back. And I think that I've worked in 4 Scottish local authorities, and some have used that term care management and then decided no, that actually you have to kind of describe what the professional is, who the professional is, because we don't call nurses care managers. But a few years back, 10, 15 years back, we would have put nurses as care managers too at the very outset of community care. But we're actually moving back into redefining what the roles of that helps, because you probably have some awareness of, you know, the term care manager over.
I mean, I think you've described the issue I was raising very, very, very well. But in the past, there was a negative connotation to the term social worker. there was a fear of the social worker. Oh God, the social worker, you're going to be reported to the social worker, you're going to get a visit from the social worker as well. And I don't know that influenced the change in names and things like that as well. But it's an interesting observation that clearly has come through from a significant number of people, and clearly, I mean, we call this the social work and social care scrutiny committee, so social work is front and centre, and I think it does make more sense to people to understand the term social work rather than another more generic term.
I think as well, just in terms of reassurance, that point that Councillor McCabe made about the undertaking of professional legislative duties, I suppose, I'm sure, Jonathan, you would give us reassurance that that's going to be addressed as well as part of ongoing training programmes, yes?
Absolutely. Running through yourself again, one of the areas of development that we're going to be taking forward is looking at our learning and development offer. We're very fortunate in the HSCP to have a learning and development team, and it's primarily focused on supporting some of those staff going through the building process, but also other staff undertaking SVQs, etc., and students and practice teachers on placement as well. So we're going to be looking at what that offer looks like, and also in terms of our training board, which was developed quite some time ago, I think in the initial aftermath of the pandemic. But as we've seen that complexity, and as we work to address some of the recruitment challenges locally, it's a good opportunity to review the purpose of that training board and actually see how that can come together really to support the development of staff around some of those professional tasks as well. So that will be moving ahead as the year progresses as well.
Thanks. Councillor Jackson.
Just kind of touching on what Jonathan just said there, and talking about the complexities and the challenges these are thrown up. In 3.7, Jonathan talked about the risk of not being able to make statutory duties. I'm just wondering if there are any areas within Evergreen identified as at risk of not being able to make these statutory duties. And the other question I was going to ask, and again, it's in relation to these complexities. In 311, we talk about staff recruitment and training. I was just kind of wondering if, given these complexities, what kind of changes to the training, the education of standard kind of social work, when you go through university and get your first couple of years of work, of these challenges, is the training, is the education changing as it needs to? Or is it a case of once you're in the field and once you're in there working, that's when you really face the challenges and you're learning as much on the job as what you do get through 4 or 5 years of education?
Through there. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. In terms, first of all, your first point at 3.7 about our local ability to meet our statutory duties, I'm confident that we have that capacity. In terms of our challenges more recently, over the last couple of years, we've been very much focused on children and families, but even within that, we've still been able to develop our workforce in terms of their confidence in applying the legislation around child protection, and the fact that we've been able to recruit to the majority of our vacancies over recent months just strengthens that position. In terms of justice, social work and adult support protection, the workforce there has been a bit more stable and with a bit less turnover, so those core statutory duties and within mental health officers as well, we've been able to grow that too. So we are in a good position on that front. It's always going to change, but overall we're confident about our ability to meet those statutory duties. In terms of the training, the experience of social workers going through the social work course, it has certainly changed over time, there's no doubt about that. And I think also in terms of how we've tried to address the challenge not just of having newly qualified social workers coming in and then learning on the job, but actually how we support qualifying social workers has been really key to being able to retain some of the workforce. And Inverclyde was one of the pilot areas for the development of the newly qualified supported first year, which provided a much stronger development plan for social workers coming from university and into post for that first year. And the training development team spoke about just before, has a key role in supporting social workers through that supported first year. Nationally, I suppose that programme has become quite complicated and quite complex. There's a lot of asks on newly qualified social workers now that has been rolled out nationally. So there's some ongoing discussion between chief social work officers and the SSC as the registration body about the manageable expectations on first year qualifying students, because we want to make sure that their experience locally is positive and that they are supported, but also that the national ask on them to demonstrate their learning on an ongoing basis is proportionate and manageable. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Moran.
Aye, thanks, Convener. Again, it's 100.7. I have to say, last week, the Health Board gave a very good presentation over doing the Amplified regarding overload and stuff like that, right? Which is not a national issue. It was an issue that we took down the Amplified because we needed to do something quickly. So, my argument is, you know, there's a financial aspect to this as well. And if somebody is newly qualified and they get an opportunity to work somewhere else for more salary, it's going to be a part of their thinking before they take that job up. You understand what I mean? And that's we all that's just the way life is. So my view is that we do grow overload, but until we get a national policy where everyone is an equal playing field, regardless if you work in Glasgow or Stirling or Stornoway or the Borders, it's the same sort of opportunities you get. Until we get that through Scotland, I think we're all going to be nice challenge here, I think, to try and attract people here and keep them here. And I think that grow your own policy we've got, plus the graduate policy, has made a big difference to us doing here. And that's the point we're allowed to do that. So any national strategy, we look forward to it, but as long as it's an equal playing field for everyone. So if you're qualified, you might want to come to my fight, and it'll be the same terms and conditions to get to go to some other places called. So that would matter, you know, everybody's given the same opportunity, and everyone will go for it, not just the big ones.
Can I just say I would support that position, you know, very much so, because that inequality has been there for as long as I've been a qualified social worker. We had, when the regions were there, we had more stability around the regions and what was paid than we've had when we've been unitary authorities. So I would welcome some kind of national terms and conditions and salary.
As long as we got the extra money to fund it.
Absolutely. I think we would need the extra money, because if we thought that we could do it here, we would have done it already, but we can't, and we can't afford it. So, but we also know that people aren't always driven by salary. And the reason why I think that we've done well in the recruitment is the support and the practice models around building relationships with families, having more time with families. That point that you made, Councillor McCabe, not social work being one of how can we help and enable people and go back to the core values of social work, as opposed to thinking that something has happened or something wrong and we intervene. And so we need to build on our relationships with families and look at the strengths, and that's the only way that we're going to shift the balance of care within our place.
Thanks. Jonathan.
Thank you, Convener. Just one final point from myself, I suppose, just building on its response to yourself, Councillor Moran. I think the National Social Work Agency, in its revised form through the legislation being developed at the minute, will have a role in that in terms of looking at that national picture, because you're absolutely right, there is that regional variation, and actually when we look at the starting salary, Inverclyde is not in a terribly bad place at all, but I think sometimes there's this perception of the geographical distance of Inverclyde sometimes from other areas. Now that's something none of us can change, but we're really fortunate in Inverclyde that so many of our workforce are from the local area and want to continue to work in the local area. But as you say, Kate, it's not just about the financial offer, it's the support through qualifying and also the support and that ongoing development that people are able to access. And I think that's really important. So it's those non-financial aspects that will be built to that aspect.
And I can just come back in. I think you're right, Jonathan, but at the end of the day, we're in this during a time where centralisation seems to be the big buzzword, how we centralise to somewhere else, you know. So it's when I'm obviously you've got people workers they might want to go to the bigger cities for career advancement, because we're told all the time to help people. It's clinicians' decisions not to come to Inverclyde, they want to be in Queen Elizabeth or whatever. You know, and we would be daft who thought whenever some people, ambitious young people, or not maybe not young people, but another we wanted that opportunity. You want your opportunity as well, but the same token, if you want to come here, why we take the same terms and conditions and equal to everyone else?
Thanks, Councillor Moran. And we are just coming to you, Councillor Armstrong, but I think, of course, you're right to refer to the regional variations, but obviously that wasn't just a local issue that was addressed here, it was a national recruitment challenge of social workers that were seeing national recruitment challenges in a range of areas. So it was an issue Scotland-wide, but I think although we're obviously absolutely right to be here to scrutinise, as is the name of the panel, it's also really good to recognise that was really important local work done here to address that national challenge that did impact on us here in Inverclyde, and that local work has really started to bear fruit. And I think, you know, in item 4.3, we might hear more about it at a later date at this panel or elsewhere, but I think just seeing that the local work done through recruitment, through Grow Your Own, through the support to the master's students has really made it possible to fill most of the social work vacancies here, which kind of bucks the national trend. So I think that's worth just recognising that there are challenges to what we can do here in our local authority, but the officers have done a really good job there in challenging what's a national picture to get local results. So thanks very much. And Councillor Armstrong, yourself.
Thanks, Convener. Yes, I too remember the happier days of a much more level playing field, and I remember the debate about I mean, there was a period when all sorts of people who clearly, their staff who clearly weren't social workers were calling themselves social workers, and then it went the other way around where all sorts of staff who clearly were social workers were called something else. And it's been a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much for your report. Can I just say in relation to 4.5, can we indeed request a report to a future meeting as an update on progress? Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor Armstrong, and thanks to Councillor Armstrong and Councillor McCabe today for giving us a bit of the historical background to the issues that we're discussing today. That was most welcome. We've just got, I don't see any more hands up, so it's for us to accept the recommendations on page 17. Councillor Armstrong's already mentioned the future report that was noted in the paper, so thank you. That takes us on to item 4, which is about the prison to home pilot, and I'm going straight to Maxine Ward to talk us through that. Thanks, Maxine.
Thanks, Convener. So the paper outlines the progress that's been made locally in developing the sustainable housing on release for everyone, which is the SHORE standards in Inverclyde, to prevent homelessness upon prison release, and includes a collaborative protocol developed between Riverclyde Homes, Justice Social Work and the Community Justice Partnership and our Housing Options and Homelessness Advice Service. So a key part of the justice system's approach to creating safer communities and reducing offending is to support people not only with sustainable and settled housing options, but to also improve access to public services to encourage long-term desistance from crime. The SHORE standards set a clear pathway to sustainable housing for people leaving prison that starts while they're still in custody and continues until their release. The standards aim to increase individuals' chances of reintegrating back into their community successfully, not just through meeting their housing needs, but also more holistically by improving access to other support services to reduce reoffending. A multi-agency commitment is now in place between the agencies that I previously mentioned to undertake a pilot aimed at ensuring housing and support is in place prior to the point of liberation to prevent a traumatic homelessness journey at the end of a prison sentence, and to avoid the negative cycle of repeat homelessness. The pilot will initially support 10 individuals from the Inverclyde area with a planned liberation date within the next 12 months. And those identified will be offered early access to support, which supports appropriate housing, ensuring choice and control in the decision-making process and access to appropriate housing from the first day of liberation. We emphasise the need for individuals to have access for a wide range of needs-led supports, including existing HSCP, third sector and voluntary supports in order to create the success that we hope around the pilot. You'll see at 4.1 that a protocol document has been prepared by Riverclyde Homes in partnership with the HSCP and the Community Justice Partnership. But in summary, the collaborative approach seeks to provide stable housing and support for individuals leaving custody in Inverclyde, reducing reliance on homelessness applications and improving reintegration into the community. The key objectives of the pilot are to prevent homelessness, ensuring housing and support are in place before liberation to avoid temporary placements and short-term accommodation, to promote stability by providing individuals with stable housing options and access to wider public services, and for us to embed SURE standards, integrating housing needs into our pre-release planning to support long-term desistance from crime. The scope of the pilot will initially, as I said, support 10 individuals from Inverclyde with planned liberation dates within the next 12 months. Riverclyde Homes will provide up to 10 unfurnished short Scottish secure tenancies, which will transition to full tenancies after 6 months if successful. In terms of support, then participants will receive tailored assistance, including financial advice, tenancy readiness training, and access to community services. We'll measure the success of the pilot based on the percentage of tenancies transitioning to full Scottish secure tenancies, the sustainability of tenancies beyond 12 months, a reduction in homelessness presentations, and in conclusion, the Prison to Home pilot represents a proactive approach to addressing the complex relationship between homelessness and offending. By providing stable housing and integrated support, the initiative aims to improve life chances for individuals leaving custody and contribute to safer communities in Inverclyde. If successful, the pilot will serve as a model for wider implementation, and it's important to note that this pilot will not replace any other existing processes that are in place that manage the safety in this within our communities. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Maxine. Councillor Moran?
It's Councillor McCabe.
Oh, Councillor McCabe.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Thank you for the report. I mean, I think this is a very welcome pilot. But I've got a few questions. So it talks in 2.1 about individuals returning to Inverclyde. I presume it also includes those incarcerated in Greenock Prison, potentially as well, who are local residents.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
The report talks about individuals returning to Inverclyde.
Yeah.
I presume it also includes those incarcerated in Greenock Prison.
Yeah, that's where the main focus will be. Yeah.
So we're talking about 10 individuals here. It would be useful to get an understanding of, on average, how many Inverclyde residents are coming out of prison in any sort of 12-month period, and I suppose what is the typical route for them. And you'll be pleased to know my last question is, you mentioned, and it says in the protocol, RCS are going to provide 10 unfurnished tenancies. So furnishing a flat or a house is a big challenge, both financially and practically. So what support will be given to the ex-offenders, the new tenants, in terms of furnishing the accommodation?
Okay, so on your first point, in terms of the pilot will really focus on those who have been incarcerated for more than 12 months, really. So that's really when we start to see the impact on people's housing situations. So that's where our focus will be. In terms of the numbers of people coming out, then I'm not exactly sure of that, because again, the pilot is going to focus on those with more than 12 months incarceration. So that's it's not looking at everybody coming out over a 12-month period. in terms of the furnished and unfurnished aspects of the tenancies, you're absolutely right. Those were some of the questions that I asked when we started talking about this pilot. The route just now for people leaving prison is through our homelessness services, and they would go into either the Inverclyde Centre or temporary furnished flats. So the plan, and those people who go through that homelessness pathway, if you like, they would go into temporary furnished flats that are obviously furnished, and when they're going into permanent residences, then our housing options and housing advice services support them to access Scottish welfare funds, etc., to make sure that we can furnish their properties for them. So that'll be no different for these people coming through. Yes, they're unfurnished, but they will receive the same support. So the wraparound support that we provide through our homelessness services will be the wraparound support that's wrapped around these people coming out as well. So there'll not be any detriment to them in terms of coming out to these Scottish short secure tenancies and it from an unfurnished perspective.
I mean, that's helpful to know. I didn't pick that up in the protocol, so it's maybe something that maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to have a look at that, yeah. And of course, as I said, that's one of the things that I picked up and when we started having these discussions, to make sure that we're not just bringing people out to empty properties, because that's not going to serve as any purpose at all. So they will be fully supported.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, I think you were wanting to make an additional comment as well.
Yes, thank you. It's just to clarify the number of Inverclyde residents currently in custody. So we have 43 serving sentences of up to 5 years and 18 individuals serving sentences over 5 years, and the 85. The distinction between under and over 5 years is about long-term prisoners and about the legislation around that, but that's for the full prison estate. So whilst we've got Green Prison in the Inverclyde area, those individuals will be serving sentences across the estate nationally.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I think there's also, would we be right in saying there's also a key third sector partner here in Inverclyde that supports the furnishing and support of flats as well? But that's obviously something that yourselves and the officers have taken into consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always said it, the third sector partnership arrangements in Inverclyde are second to none. So yeah, it's needless to say that the multi-agency collaboration includes our consideration of our third sector partners and the supports that they provide. So the supports that they're providing to our people who are experiencing homelessness in Inverclyde will also be available to support this pilot as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Just to reassure elected members that there's a really strong evidence base growing. We aren't first to implement these shore standards. A lot of local authorities have already implemented it, and it's shown a reduction in reoffending by the provision of permanent accommodation, because people get vested in the relationships that they have with the community. So hence that we want to move forward on this.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Councillor Moran.
Thank you. I think this is a real good step forward. It makes a lot of sense. If RSLs have got a load of empty houses and we've got people living, why don't we match them up to them? That makes sense. I think a lot too would be the house, the type of house, where they are. We don't want to put this for sake in a body somewhere, but we're not appropriate, which we've seen in the past, as you will know. I know we're going to be working into these individuals that come out of prison. We don't know the barrier for again, but these people are going to try and contact their families, things again. And if they've got a place they call their own, it will be a lot more easier to assimilate back into society. They come out of one institution, they put another one to the homeless, send you and I know. So I think it's a great step in the right direction, and that's a pilot. So it'll be interesting to see at the end of the job how good it is. But I've got high hopes that this will work. Just at the Rapid House and thing about it as well. I think this is a real step in the right direction to give everybody the opportunity to go on their lives and really come away from criminality. And I'm looking forward to starting.
Can I just, thank you. I'm really pleased you said that, and this is not a huge step away from what we do anyway in terms of our supporting the people who we support through the homelessness pathway. It's not a massive step away from that, to be honest with you. And actually supporting people so early on in the journey, so making sure that we're connecting with people in prison, you know, up to 12 months before they come out of prison, helps us build those relationships, helps us really have that multi-agency consideration of where we're putting them and whether it's the right place for them, really looking at some of the things that you spoke about relationships and all of those things. So all of that pre-planning whilst they're still in prison is going to do exactly what you just described there, make sure that we're putting them in the right places. When we are through the pilot, and again, this is not too far removed from what we already do, through the pilot, when we consider each individual sort of assessment and application, if you like, we will be looking at where River Clyde homes are saying that there are homes available. We will be making sure that we are not clustering people. We will be making sure that when we're bringing people out, they've got easy access to public services and public support, and they've got easy access to public transport. So all of those things are already considered within that multi-agency meeting that goes on for 12 months before somebody comes out of prison, really. So yeah, I don't, what you described is not too far removed from what we already do anyway. So I think it'll be a success as well.
No, in fact, the past I used to serve in the prison, they come in and we got to visit, and that was one of the anxieties I had when it came up with potential release, where they were going to end up, you know, and that was something that was addressed back in the day. I'm glad it's back now, but we'll at least give them a chance when they come out of prison to go on with a release.
Thanks very much. And I think for ourselves, it's that it's really those points in that item 3.2 about the reduction in reoffending, the evidence base for that, and as Maxie made that additional point about the increase in community safety that results from that. Kate, were you wanting to come back at no, thanks. Sorry, Councillor Jackson.
Aye, thanks. It's I mean, like everybody else, I've got this. I think it's very positive. It's, you know, it's a pilot scheme. The recognised numbers are low. You know, they're going to be 10 in the first pilot bit. The measure of success at 75%. You don't feel like putting a wee bit of pressure on yourself, because I would think that even if you get 50%, you know, that would be a target. If you achieve 50%, that would be a measure of success. You know, I just don't want to think you're making a way going back here, because if you didn't meet that, I would still say that the success. You know, if you get five ex-offenders to get accommodation, rehabilitate and start, if they're up around care, you know, lead, healthy lifestyles. But it's just a comment. It's not criticism, honestly.
No, I appreciate that comment, and I appreciate the support. I suppose looking at it from the other end, you know, we should always push ourselves to be, you know, the absolute best that we can be, and make the assumptions of when we are looking at pilots like this. You know, we have interrogated them thoroughly before we develop them, so we're quite confident about the success. But similarly, you know, if we don't reach that 75%, I'll be the first one to come here and say, what has our learning been around why we haven't reached the 75%? In order to make us better for the next time. So I get what you're saying about, you know, but I think in terms of confidence in the pilot and confidence in the knowledge and skills of the people that are going to be delivering the pilot, I'm happy to go at 75% and come back to you, you know, and however long, and say we didn't reach the 75% but those are our opportunities for learning. But I'm less certain we'll be doing that than coming back to you with our 75%. Without that sounding boastful, but I just have confidence in the people that deliver the service. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thanks very much, Convener. Yeah, just to add to what everybody else has said, very, very much welcome it, and it's a fantastic initiative. And look forward to hearing how it goes.
Thank you.
Very best wishes for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll just note the recommendations on page 23. Thanks very much. And that's us on to item 5, which is about the Children and Families redesign and foster carer fees uplift. Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you, Convener. So this report is to inform of the Health and Social Care Partnerships Children's Service redesign that we touched on earlier on today. And at the heart of that redesign is recognising the importance of families and all types of families, including critically the role of foster carers, providing safe, nurturing care to some of the most vulnerable babies, infants and children and young people across Inverclyde. Ongoing work is a key strand of the redesign, as members will know, is to increase the number of local fostering households. And we have gone through an extensive process of benchmarking against comparative authorities with regards our fostering fee for foster carers, and we recognised that that was not competitive compared to other areas across Scotland, including neighbouring local authorities. And as members know, that has impacted locally in our ability to recruit and retain foster carers. But it's also important to acknowledge again, as you heard earlier, that is set within a national context of significant challenge around recruitment and retention of foster carers. A further report was presented to IGIB on the 23rd of June with the detailed analysis of that benchmarking activity, and it was proposed that an enhanced and simpler fostering fee was put in place to attract and retain foster carers across all age ranges for children in need and who are vulnerable. The IGIB agreed and gave a direction for the Health and Social Care Partnership and Children's Services to uplift the fee quite considerably. And as the paper notes, that was uplifted to £350 per child per week across all age ranges, recognising that fostering is a huge commitment of love and nurture and stability, and that's a given regardless of the age and stage of the child that you're caring for. So it's to update the scrutiny panel that once we were given the IGIB direction to lift the fee, we proceeded very quickly, and we, within a few weeks, we communicated with all our foster carers, and we lifted the fee, and they got that in terms of their income really almost immediately. And since that time, in mid-July, we have very much been listening to the feedback of our foster carers. We're still building that feedback. It's still quite early days. But what the report highlights is the overwhelmingly positive messages from our foster carers. Many foster carers have shared how delighted they are, and they really feel, based on that significant investment, that their contribution as foster carers has been absolutely recognised by Inverclyde Council, and they appreciate that. And they feel, and they're clear, it will make a difference in their day-to-day lives and in the children's lives that they look after, a substantial difference, particularly when we recognise the challenges in terms of poverty, cost of living crises, and the pressures that all families are under, but particularly some of our carers looking after some of our more vulnerable children, which we know can in itself incur additional cost. So we have been clear that that is one important plank and foundation of our redesign through an integrated recruitment approach, which means that we absolutely want to retain as best we possibly can our existing foster carers. They're our best advertising, our best message, our best people to then help us recruit new foster carers. And within the context of that increased fee, we have set ourselves what may seem a small target, but it's not. It's a stretch target, a wee bit like what Maxine was talking about through the test, of aiming to recruit a minimum of 5 fostering households each year. So that has been costed as well within the finance set aside as part of this broader package of redesign work. So hopefully members agree with me and our carers that this is a very, very positive report with incredible work that's been on behind the scenes over quite a period of time to get to this point, to get the money in the pockets of our foster carers and to be getting that very positive feedback that I can't underestimate. People are telling us it's changing their life. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Margaret. Councillor Armstrong.
Thanks, Karina. Yes, as the former foster carer on the panel, I welcome this report and the uplift in norms. It's fantastic. I've spoken in this scrutiny panel before about how the differentials were damaging our services and damaging children, and I think I welcome it. I welcome it enormously. I also think, and I'm delighted to hear that carers are very appreciative and grateful for what we've done. But I also think that I hope that they will be telling members of the family and their social circle, about the change and the difference, because what we really want are natural networks of carers, so that they can support themselves and provide a bit of respite. It isn't it isn't a stranger, it isn't somebody who's out with their circle. What I'm talking about is, perhaps different generations of the same family becoming carers, so that it's not, it's a naturally occurring support system, if you like, for the carers, and I hope that will happen too, because it's the best thing for kids, it's the best thing for the children. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor Armstrong. I know, as you said, we've talked about this. We've seen some reports before, and we know and really recognise all the work that's gone into making this happen and the decisions made at different parts of the council and the IJB. So it's really welcome, because, as you say, we really do value the foster carers that we have here in Inverclyde and want to see that number going up. So no, really appreciate that. I don't see any more comments or questions online, but I now see Councillor Jackson.
Thanks. Just to welcome this. We've started the year before with the cost of living crisis, the pressure. It was for the family service increasing demand in social work. Robert touched on inflation earlier on there. And more than how difficult it is to make ends meet. It's not just affecting lower paid workers, it's affecting most days now, the cost of living crisis. So I can imagine how difficult it must be to take a child, foster a child with the pressure. So absolutely welcome it, and it just shows that it's an investment not just in families, but it's an investment in the child as well. And I'm very much welcome that.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so that's great to hear a bit more of an update about that. Thanks very much, Margaret, and we'll just note the recommendations on page 34. Thanks very much. That takes us on to item number 6, which is the Health and Care Staffing Scotland Act. Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Convener, for yourself. This is a very good report that outlines the statutory basis through the Health and Care Staffing last year, and sets out requirements around appropriate staffing and health and care services. So there are some legislative duties within that, not just for health, but also for integrated authorities, particularly whenever they're removing contracts for registered care services. So I'm going to pass to Arlie just to talk through the submission that we made for the last year.
Okay, so as Jonathan said, the Act was implemented on the 1st of April 2024, and there was an established safer staffing programme board set up within Inverclyde, and there was steps taken to ensure that the Act was getting implemented within our social care services. We also, within the procurement side, we ensure that contracts stipulated staff and requirements, including registration, training and fair work practices. The contract management framework, we obviously regularly monitored, ensured that compliance for the staffing standards were in place. In any service reviews, there was assessment, evaluation, service outcomes for the staffing to adhere to guiding the principles. The risks were, because there was 2 points to the report that we needed to complete, was the steps to take and the risks. And the risks were found that it was financial pressures and cost increases to the national insurance that may have impacted service stability. Recruitment and retention, and we've talked about that before, that was challenges and resilience for agency staff and affecting continuity of staff, and staff wellbeing that may be affected by the increasing demand and financial constraints. So there was a report that was completed, which is at Appendix 1, and it was submitted to the Scottish Government website and also put on the HSCP website by the 30th of June 2025. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Arlene. Thank you. No, I think there are no questions and comments at this point. Thanks very much for that. So we'll just note the content of the report and note the report to Scottish Government. Thank you. That takes us on to item 7. So let's move into